The road to a headless Drupal Commerce future. In this, we'll be talking about what we're doing to get on the decoupled train and why that's important and how it's going to affect people that don't really need to decouple, the benefits you'll get out of it. Alright, so about myself, my name's Matt Glaman. I'm a senior Drupal consultant at Commerce Guys. I'm a co-maintainer of Drupal Commerce. I wrote the Drupal 8 development cookbook. One of the little side projects I maintain is contribkanban.com. If you use it, it turns Drupal.org issue queues to Kanban boards. And I made a PHP Storm plugin that runs the runtest.sh testing script. So for those who are evaluating Drupal Commerce or just getting started to it, Drupal Commerce is a complete e-commerce ecosystem that powers tens of thousands of websites and based off of some reverse engineering of like partner data and general knowledge of clients. There's about 1.5 billion in annual transactions a year. So that's a little bit about Drupal Commerce, and I always feel that Drupal Commerce has been decoupled from the get-go because every time that I built a Drupal Commerce site, it wasn't decoupled in the front end necessarily, but it always fed data, or it always read data and consumed it from back-end ERPs, product information systems. Orders always went to order management systems. So it was like the head to your back-end systems. Now we're going to talk about what it's like to decouple Drupal and the ways that you can interact with Drupal Commerce that way. One example of the previous use case is a Sport Obermeyer project. This was the first Drupal Commerce 2 site to launch that I had the pleasure of working on. And as you can see, to add to cart, when you pick options, we imported feeds from about 40 different online partners. And as you pick options, it had to check their inventory feed and then send you off-site to a direct-to-cart link. So again, Drupal Commerce was already decoupled in a way because it was taking all these other remote data sources. So Drupal Commerce is good at this concept of remote data or pushing data to other remote sources. But we're here to talk about decoupling Drupal, not how Drupal can be decoupled on something else. So the road to a headless Drupal Commerce, we're first going to go through why is decoupling important, where was Drupal Commerce early in 2018, where we are now, and what we're looking to do in the future. So why is decoupling important when working with e-commerce? First off, it just makes it faster and more reactive experiences, right? We're in the age where everybody's expecting to press something and it's an immediate change. The days of like refreshing the page or waiting on an action are gone. Like you need to be fast and snappy. And also decoupling solves some hard Drupal problems. Specifically Drupal performance problems, right? You're always transitioning, there's always problems everywhere you go, but there's some specific Drupal performance problems that decoupling or progressive decoupling bypasses. So the hard Drupal problems. First off, as soon as somebody gets a cart, and this is with most e-commerce systems, when somebody gets a cart, you need to know that they have a cart, and that creates a session. Well, in Drupal, as soon as somebody has a session, that first internal page cache is blown away. You can't use it anymore. So you now instantly lose a layer of protection against your resources. So that instantly makes Drupal Commerce any e-commerce application, a more resource-intensive process because they're hitting uncached values. Those cache misses during high volume times means that it's taking more resources to render product pages, which means it's slowing down the whole buying process. And then we've had experiences where people put multiple add to cart forms on a page, or like a catalog, right? You see a whole catalog, 30 quick add to carts. Those are Drupal forms, which means that they're being rendered, which means that they're adding to the form cache, which just starts to cascade and leads to a lot of bloat in the database, or all of a sudden Redis Memcache just dies and Redis is bloated up, and it's just joys and joys of fun. So one thing that we did for a customer is we decoupled the add to cart form. It became completely JavaScript driven. And for Black Friday last year, I did load testing for 9,000 concurrent users doing about 450 requests per second. That's when it started to like dip into, it probably won't work anymore, but that was our load testing goal. And with the decoupled add to cart, it allowed us to reach that maximum transaction level. And performance turns into more conversions, right? We load tested that without the JavaScript, and it was maybe like 1,000 users. And by decoupling the add to cart form, which let us put more things behind a reverse proxy, and also just leverage Google's page caching, 9,000 users. Because our only bottleneck then was the checkout, which is when people are giving you money. And it's okay to use resources on people that are giving you money. You don't want to just use resources on people browsing the site. All right, so where were we in the decoupled spectrum in 2018, in the beginning of the year? We had no specific initiatives. It was like we were always watching the API first initiative and seeing like making sure that we work with it, but there was no specific effort to just go forth and be like, we're going to decouple Drupal Commerce. It's headless in the wild, and we had always marked it as a platform goal. Ryan's all about hypermedia. He owns hyperdrupal.org, and he's been talking about it since like 2012. I want to highlight a case study that's on Drupal.org that really wowed us. So Z Kung Fu is one of the biggest food franchises in China, and they run about $750 million US dollars through their system a year. That's built on Drupal Commerce. So it's Drupal Commerce it's Drupal as a microservice that powers their POS system, and everything coordinates via JSON API because they have their like PIM, then they have the POS system, then they have the order management system, and all of these are Drupal Commerce instances that talk to each other via JSON API. And there's other magic. It's really neat. If you go to the case study, which I'll put the slides up online somewhere, but you can find it. It's actually featured on the e-commerce industry page, and it gives actually a layout of how they built it. And then hopefully this GIF plays. I was just sent this from OpiumWorks, and around the same time that we started kicking things off, they had a client that sells sunglasses, and they wanted this crazy configurator. This is actually Angular that lets people pick the attributes, and then they add it to the cart, just saying they don't have variations, I believe. They just say, we know we need these colors, stuff it into the data, they're buying it for this much, done. And then that data blob gets sent to their backend ERP, which then fulfillment knows how to make and deliver that order. And it's just neat to see that people are doing these things with a decoupled experience, and also makes the case for it. Right? Could you imagine doing that with Form API and Form Ajax? It'd go run it to the lake. So early 2018, I went to Florida Drupal Camp to just do a general Drupal Commerce talk. And that's where I learned about the JavaScript Initiative. I'd heard about this whole React and Core, we're going to find ways to decouple. But I got to sit with some of the initiative leads, because the week before Florida Drupal Camp, they committed it to the maintainers.txt. Oh, and MJ's don't work. That's lame. But there's trains. But that got me motivated to be on the decoupled train. I saw that as being it wasn't a one-off for a one client. It's something that we could put in Contrib and try to make Commerce provide solutions out of the box. Because it's not fair to say, you should decouple your website with Drupal Commerce, but we're not going to give you any tooling for it. Go read some other things and do it yourself. That's not as a maintainer, that's not very nice to do. And that's where I had the idea to do the cart API. It's like, all right, we need to pick one specific thing to focus on, and what would have the highest impact. If we had a cart API, an API around saying, I want to buy this, and I want to know how much it's going to cost, and that way we don't need to use Drupal's session data or the form API or have to render a block. We bypass some of the worst performing parts of the system. I'll give some background into that. So the limited scope, we did some investigation with using JSON API to return data, found some roadblocks there. Spent February through DrupalCon trying to reconcile and see how we could use JSON API spec by making JSON API dependency, and there's just some technical problems. So for now, they're all REST modules, or REST module plugins, and we'll be looking to see how to continue working with JSON API and the API first people to make sure our contrib meets with where core is kind of going and the community's going. So where we are now, We have the cart flyout, which I'll demonstrate. I spent all of August working on a decoupled checkout API, and then JSON API and review. So the cart flyout, it's a progressively decoupled add to cart form. So I know this term progressively decoupled has been used a few times. What it means is Drupal still serves the product page, catalog, authentication, all of that, but just anything that involves the cart is in the client. Drupal renders a block that then bubbles up some data and then JavaScript kicks in. Because that means that your product page can be behind the page cache module or behind Varnish, and you never have to hit the server to render the cart form because the JavaScript will do it for you. And then this builds off. One reason that we decided to go this route is we realized that this was a design principle that's in the wild, and we had a lot of Drupal Commerce users implementing this, but having to use like Drupal Form API and all these hacks. So we wanted to just give it something. So when we say flyout, that means you have your little cart block. When you click it, something comes out, and you can manage your cart. Example: Lush Cosmetics did this even like in 2012 or whenever that site was built. Recently, Orlo Watches by 1X Internet, they did the same thing. And we also found out from 1X Internet that the fact we built this, like we can sell this faster, right? Let's say that took them 20 hours. That's 20 hours that can be allocated to something else because we released this as contrib. All right, let the GIF play real quick. So this is on one of our demo sites. So the attribute select, all that is now in JavaScript. Before that was a Drupal Form API. It still does variation injection. That means, when you change from blue to green, it changes what fields display. That's why the color changes. Updating the cart is all inside of the JavaScript flyout. Removing something. And I had tested this on my local, which was slow because it had Xdebug. Then I put it on the demo site, and I got giddy because it was so fast. And so that's the cart flyout. That is Commerce Cart Flyout. It's a module that's on Drupal.org, pretty stable, and so far it has about 120 sites reporting it in. And it's only a month and a half old, so that's really exciting and shows we're kind of going on the right path. Now the hard one, Checkout API. My dream is to make it where you don't need Drupal for the cart. You just need it for your checkout because you just need something that takes money. So to start experimenting that, I created a Checkout API module, and that would allow you to use carts in local storage. And to get it started, I actually used Gatsby.js to consume Drupal Commerce data from JSON API to scaffold a static catalog. So that's where you could have an offline catalog then that's used, and then have the checkout. So if someone is on a mobile app shopping your site, they're on a train, they go on a tunnel, they lose data. They can still add things to the cart and browse your catalog, and then once they get internet, you can take the transaction. That's what the possibilities can unfold. So I'll do a quick GIF of this as well. It's mimicking our demo sites. It's a little rough because it's trying to do I had to learn Gatsby and other React things while going through this. But all this data is still stored in local storage instead of talking to Drupal, and it doesn't talk to the Drupal server until now. So it went and it took all the data and it asked for a summary. So every time an action is submitted, it asks for a summary of the data. I applied a coupon, gave me a discount. I'm going to enter in a South Carolina address. Now I have my taxes, because we configure it to have taxes for Greenville, South Carolina. And then this is actually Braintree hosted fields. One of my goals was to actually integrate a legitimate payment gateway and take the payment. So I'm going to click. It takes a little bit because Braintree Sandbox is horribly slow. And my wonderful confirmation alert window shows that it went through. Then I got the email. Ta-da. And then again, going back to JSON API. So it works great for retrieving individual products. Creating a catalog is difficult because JSON API and just APIs in general expect it to be silos of a single kind of content. But in Drupal Commerce, we kind of have this fluid data model where there can be products of a catalog could have your clothing, your books, your shoes all in one catalog, but those are different types. And with an API, those would be different endpoints to get a collection. So we're trying to figure out how we can go about that route. It might be not JSON API for catalogs, maybe GraphQL and Search API. That's why I'm here at this conference to find out. And after Gabe's session yesterday, I'm actually really excited to learn about link metadata, because that would actually solve a lot of our problems with the add to cart forms. So we will keep working on this, and I would love Drupal Commerce to use JSON API, because that's becoming the de facto way to work with entities over an API in Drupal. And there's an example of the output, just in case you're not familiar. You get the data. You can include referenced fields. So in this case, I included the brand and the variations. And in the variations, then it gives us all the data about it. And I already just talked about that. Which we're not alone, actually. At Nashville, sat down, and Search API has a lot of the same problems with the JSON API stuff. And so does the Admin UI initiative for like the node content like management form, because it shows all of your nodes despite the content type. So they kind of hit that same problem. Hopefully we can solve it together, or they solve it first while we're working on other things. Either way, it's not a problem that's just us, so it can be attacked by multiple people. So where are we going? So doing a fully decoupled Drupal commerce is still a far way off. And that's because e-commerce is hard. So I don't think just here's an API is going to work, right? We already have a very robust CRUD API from JSON API or the core REST module. You can create things, you can update. But orders, like how do you add an order item to an order and then make sure that it combines? There's things in there that are hard to do with this, a basic API. So we're trying to identify like remote procedure calls that need to be done. And right now those are acting as REST module plugins. I'd like to see what the JSON RPC module could do for us, because that way it's more discoverable. But the goal is by end of 2019 to have a really good solution in place, or solutions. And to do that, we'll do it in Contrib, because if we were to put any of this into Commerce Core itself, we're stuck with it for life. It's kind of like Core. We couldn't make any breaking changes. So while we're learning, it's going to be in Contrib until a later time when maybe JSON APIs in Core, and we're like, okay, we can at least put some of this into Commerce because we know it's stable in Core. So the one thing that I want to work on is progressively decoupling the checkout. So not fully decoupled, but making part of the checkout faster by progressively decoupling it. Because as we learn lessons, we can build a better API, which lets us then do a fully decoupled solution. And through one of those is to do headless, which is just a fancy term for saying that all of your API is linked. That's what. To learn more about it, look up Gabe's session from yesterday, since these all recorded and will be uploaded. But what it would do is, let's say you get a catalog, and then that list links to all the products, so you can view the product. And then on the product, it says here's the add to cart URL and the post methods template. Here's how you add this to the cart. Oh, you're in checkout. If you need to collect order information, your only actionable links are provide me the order information, email, billing address. Okay, now that you've done that, your next actionable action is to select a shipping method, things like that. So the API will tell you what your next steps are. And I realized that when working on the checkout API, I realized we need that, because there's so much hard-coded logic in the work I did, because it's not discoverable. So it's very much of a learning process, and this is where we're going. And I'd love to see it where this allows us to keep our checkout form configuration on the back end, and then that describes to your front end client on how to build the checkout form. So like Pipedream, you configure your checkout in the back end, and then it auto builds and auto scaffolds on your front end based off of your back end configuration. And then the next thing is like, do we do React.js or insert other framework, Vue, Angular, Elm, etc., etc., etc. I'm picking React just because the Admin UI initiative is, and I'm only now getting used to modern JS development. But the one thing I would like to do, and after talking to JavaScript people, Drupalisms don't work in modern JS. This idea of like, I'm going to take a template, a base template, and I'm going to allow it to be swappable. That doesn't work. You actually need to build a component library and provide a default, and then allow people to rebuild their own. So that means that, does that mean that we're going to have to build a Drupal Commerce React library, a Vue library, all these things that let you build your own checkout? So now it's, okay, we need to build an API. Oh, we need to build libraries and reusable components so that people in frameworks consume this data more easily. So there's a lot to figure out and go on, but we are recognizing these challenges so that way we can start to plan it out. Or hopefully we just build the APIs and somebody contributes said libraries. I touched on the JSON API and JSON RPC, so I want to work on all of these things so we can kind of standardize, since that's where the main focus is going. Again, JSON API. We have a custom schema when working with cards. It'd be great to just standardize on the JSON API spec because it's a good spec. Reuse more efforts being done by the greater community and make our APIs discoverable for like Hades. And then RPC. This would allow all of our remote procedure calls to be auto-discoverable. Right now it's just documentation. Right? For the cart API, it's, okay, I got to go to the Drupal.org page, read the docs, know what I'm allowed to do. But hopefully with JSON RPC, then it would be discoverable. All you have to do is say, hey, cart API, what are my actions? Bloop. Here's your list of actions. You don't need to read the docs. The front end or end client could just know how to do things without it being hard-coded into the system. And then I reached out to some users for feedback, and one thing would be improving the back office. Fair enough, because Drupal admin experience is kind of rough, especially when it comes to managing orders. So the main focus would be, how do we make order management better? How can we make it more like Shopify? Because I feel like that's kind of, they have a really good standard. You know, what can we do to make it more inline editing, transitions, customer data, all of that. And then I think a great one would then be like product management. How can we make it easier to manage a product? But that kind of falls more in line with, do we take actual editing of the product or maybe variation management? And so we need to figure out what one we want to try to solve and ease the end user experience. If you'd like to try a demo of the cart flyout and the cart API, if you go to demo.commercekickstart.com, that has our demo module with the Belgrade theme, which is our out-of-the-box theme, and cart flyout. So that's kind of a site, store in a box type setup. Like if you want to ever demo Drupal Commerce, you could go there and this is what you would get. Speaking of trying it, we actually have a composer template with a preview command, so you could try this out in about 10 minutes, depending on if your composer eats your RAM or not, or if the Wi-Fi is okay. So you can go to github.com/drupalcommerce/demo-project. These commands are in the README. I just put them up here to show that it's 3 lines to be able to preview it. And that will give you what you see on demo.kickstart.com, where you can at least quick test it out. You know, we built this so that way at camps we can quick show people, or if you need to evaluate it, you have a quick start to evaluate it, or if you need to show it to a client quick. Oh, we're pitching you this, like, I don't know what Drupal Commerce is, but you go, you show them, hopefully they get impressed, and then they give you money. Because we all like money. All right, and that's all I got. So thank you.